we have an amazing person that we get to sit down this week with, someone that's been around the world, but somewhere in particular that is mind-blowing. Where was she?
Shanghai.
Yeah, or
Was it
Shanghai. I don't know. I never really know.
I always get mixed up between the place and the Chinese restaurant in Brooklyn. I think it's the same name, but
oh, the Haksher there. Okay, yeah, we'll look into it. But I've always heard stories. Nachi's always heard stories about the Mir Yeshiva, and they were there. There's obviously a lot more to this person's life that you will hear, but enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Meaningful People Podcast, the podcast where we talk to people who are
meaningful.
Yeah, that sounds good.
We thank you so much, Rebbetzin Small, for coming here and sitting down with us. We know your time is valuable, so thank you so much. And we hope to really delve into your life and have a really meaningful conversation with you.
Thank you, but you're special because you're Nissen Gordon's grandson.
Oh, thank you so much.
And that goes back to a time, my father's, and that's very special. Yaakov, you, I really don't know.
Oh gosh.
So
well, we'll get to know him.
We'll get to know.
Okay, I was like, I'm getting a little jealous of Nachi here.
No. We don't do jealousy. That doesn't work.
So you actually, it's interesting. You're living currently in Chicago, and for a few months, or you came to visit, and you're in Lakewood, and you came over here. But traveling is very much in your DNA.
Very much in my blood.
Could you tell us a little about your background, originally where you were born, and your life there?
Okay. I was born in Pahust, which is a little shtetl in Lithuania. A shtetl is usually something that's 2 or 3 blocks long. Then I was registered in Pinsk. My grandfather was the Pinsk Rav, and my father wanted me to be registered in a major city. So my official birth certificate, which is not really a birth certificate nor official, is Pinsk. I'm sure you want to know. My mother was the granddaughter of Reb Moshe Landinsky. Reb Moshe Landinsky and the Chafetz Chaim had a yeshiva together. The Chafetz Chaim would be the fundraiser, and Reb Moshe Landinsky was the mashgiach there. What I want to share with you, young people, is the background which is important to me, and the background that is and that's missing here today in this day and age. I always remember my mother saying, "Mein Kind, my child, azay wird man sagt." I grew up in the house of the Chafetz Chaim. Everything that she has learned in that house is carried on into my home. And her ways, her approach of human being, everybody was tired and gold and good. Every child, she would never call you by your first name, Yaakov. She would call you Yankele. She would call you
Nachala.
Doesn't go as well.
Yes. Everything was a lot. And then I would, and attiring here, every person was so special to her. If they had faults, she never saw them. If they had good middos, she emulated that and talked about it. Her way, another way that was so special about her, is my mother always had a shikzel in the house. A shikzel means a servant or a maid. The maid would come in the morning, give my mother breakfast, but no way would the maid work until my mother came down and served her. She never raised her voice to shikzel. When she wasn't honest, and my mother would take me upstairs in the room and say, "Gib her guck, was it gegangen wird?" I said, "Mama, why do you keep her?" "She's helping me. Good, mein Kind. I won't lose anything with the schmunzes that she's taking." So she grew up with this time a different way. A wedding, when the servant would come, my mother would buy her a new dress, put on a sheitel on her, so she should be like one of the people.
It's amazing.
So what was a classic, I don't know, Shabbos like by your parents? in Pinsk?
Okay. Another one of my pet peeves is Shabbos. I'm a widow now. I make Shabbos. I don't eat. People come, they take my food. But my house has to be and smell Shabbos. No such thing as takeout. Don't do that. And whoever wants will come. And they said, why do you do it? Because it's Shabbos. I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor now for a long time. And I meet all kinds of people from all walks of life. And they know Friday they can, so they'll come and work whatever we have to do. He said, oh, this smells so good, you know. I said, yes, it's Shabbos. The house has to smell Shabbos. And even here, I'll tell you something that has nothing to do with this. I am having an interview with the Chinese lady on May 6th that I'm sticking around. And she wants to know how to make gefilte fish and how to make cholent. And we're going to have a 2-hour photo play about it. I said, this is what we have for Shabbos, Basar V'Dagim. You will not see anything from carry out in my house. And yes, one person.
Is that something you grew up around?
Yes.
That was
I don't even know if takeout really existed in those days, probably.
That is something that is, I said, whatever I heard in my home, I'm very machmir on the fact that your home is a base measures katan. And what is in your home and what happens in your home, that permeates to the children. My father, when I would come into his house, and I was a married woman, and in the morning my father would get up, and he would make me a pannkochen. You know what a pannkochen is?
Nope.
No.
Teach you some Yiddish.
Sounds
Scrambled
yummy.
eggs.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I said, Papa, I can do it myself. I said, but mein Kind, you are my guest. At the Shabbos table, my father was the king, the crown. My mother polished that crown. And whatever my mother wanted, my father did. But never, ever, ever did she criticize or say anything wrong in front of the children, in front of guests. People who come to my father's home, we had a maid all the time. But my father was the one who served his guests. I remember sitting shiva, and somebody came over, and he said, almost like cried, who will serve me the tea? Your father isn't here. So how ben Adam Chavero, the importance, the schine of a base medisch katan, the Shabbos home, and that goes for future. Those are the things that are so important to me, and I will not deviate it. That's one of my mentors.
That's really beautiful. I'm curious. So, at what point did you leave Pinsk to go to? I don't want to mix it up. You went to a few places.
At what point did I leave?
Did you leave Pinsk?
At what point did we leave Pinsk? Good question. We left. My father became a Rav in Lukach, and he was the Lukacher Rav. When we were in Lukach, we're going to the Holocaust story now. When he was in Lukach, it was taken over by the Bolsheviks, the Russians. And there was a soldier, and he said to my father, Rabin, run. World War I. This is before World War II. And my father said to him, well, why should I run? I'm here. We are in war with Germans. The Germans, the most cultivated, the most cultured, the most educated. They were the aristocracy of a nation. Why would I leave Pinsk when the Germans, if they win, we will have a wonderful life? And that was the story. But something didn't jive right. So my father left Lukach and went to Vilna. In Vilna, his brother was there. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in Vilna. I have to drink a lot.
No problem.
When he came to Vilna, he saw the matzah. At that point, my mother went to Trab. Her father was a Traberov. My mother with 3 children. And then my father called, there was no such thing as calling, made contact with my mother to say that she should come to Vilna. My mother said, no, I want to be here. This is my home, my mother, my father, 11 children in the house. She was the oldest. I would like to stay here. And the Traberov, Rab Avraham Sacharov, said to her, mein Kind, your home belongs with your husband. You have to leave. So we left Trab, but it was winter time. But it wasn't in a good time. It was a time where we had to cross the border illegally. 3 times my mother tried to cross the border. And at the 3rd time, we finally made it, and we went to Vilna. I remember the ride. You know, young children, either they block everything out of their mind, they remember nothing, or the memories are so strong. I remember in Lukács, pansies, flowers running around. I must have been 3, that I remember. And I remember the escape in horse and buggy in the winter with only your coat, 1 suitcase, and running. When we were caught twice and brought back to Trab, okay, the 3rd time, I remember my grandfather had a very trusted balagola, which means a driver of a car, no cars, of the wagon, open wagon. So we crawled on hands and knees, my mother and 3 children at night. We crawled in the bitter cold snow, came to the balagola, he put us on the wagon, and in daybreak, 2 horses, and him whipping the horses faster, faster, faster. And on the right, the Bolsheviks were shooting at us. And the horses and the nostril and the smoke and all that. And all of a sudden, he pulled the reins back, and we crossed the border. To me, the most exciting part of living in Chicago is this horrific snow. And the horrific thing, because that to me spells freedom. Freedom. I was in the hospital around December. I had a little boy, and I told my doctor, I'm in prison. I have to walk out in that snow. Snow is the thing that means life. Let me out, and they wouldn't allow you to do it. I stayed 10 days in the hospital. Dr. Gerby said, you can go out, but come right back and don't say anything to anyone.
Wow.
Snow, to me, is freedom.
So you crossed the border.
We crossed the border into Vilna.
Into Vilna.
Yes.
And how long were you in Vilna for? What was that experience?
I don't remember exactly, but I would imagine at least 6 months.
Okay. And then
Okay.
where to next?
We stayed with my uncle, Reb Chaim. In Vilna, we heard that there was a man who was giving visas to go to Curacao. This gentleman is Shiuni Shigahara. Again, the number 3 comes up all the time in my thing. There were 3 people involved with that visa. First, Shigahara, when he saw the plight of the refugees, he was in somebody's house for Hanukkah, called the emperor, spoke with the emperor if he can give visas to the refugees. 3 times, the emperor said no. He gave them anyway. How were we able to go to Curacao? There was a woman whose mother lived in the Caribbean islands, and she was able to use that of return. There was no passport necessary. None of this was. So we got visas to go to Curacao, which is in the Virgin Islands. But in order to get there, we had to go from Moscow from Vilna to Moscow, from Moscow to Vladivostok, Vladivostok to Japan, from Japan to Curacao.
It's a lot of stopovers.
Lots of stopovers. But we're not talking about lots of stopovers. We're talking about the shtetl Jew. Why would he want to go to Russia, from Moscow to Vladivostok? You know, once you get to Siberia, you don't get out. No way will you leave. Why would you just stay 2 weeks on a train, travel almost 6,000 miles, and know this is Siberia and nobody will come alive? We end up going to Japan. We get to Vladivostok. Ney comes into the play. Ney's a Japanese man. We can't board. We don't have passport to go in passage on the boat to Japan. He called the emperor also. Again, the same answer is no, you don't give them. Why would you want to save these people? We don't even know who they are. He let us go on the boat. We come to Japan. I'm making this all very quick because I can speak for hours. We come to Japan, and they throw tangerines at us. We come in, we look at the strange people, strange clothing, shoes clapping. We don't know the language. And my mother said, you know, we went through hell to get to here. Now they're sending us tangerines, and we'll all die. What's the use? They don't speak Japanese. The Japanese don't speak Yiddish or Hebrew or Polish or Russian. Lunacy. But there's another miracle that comes in. I look at Shanghai, miracles upon miracles upon miracles, and Yad Hashem in every single thing beyond comprehension. How often, till today, I said, why? Why? The whole thing made no sense. There was second person in the play, Kutsusi, a priest of aristocratic family who went to a bookstore and found the Talmud and taught himself Hebrew.
Whoa.
And he spoke Hebrew. And when the refugees came, we met with him. And the Amsterdam Rebbe, Rabbi Shlomo Shapiro, interpreted. He interpreted for us, so we were able to stay in Japan, which was only allowed for 3 days. We stayed in Japan for 1 year. We had to leave Japan, treated beyond imagination, because the Japanese were very devoted and loyal to the Jewish people, because when the Russian and Japanese war broke out, a fellowship funded the whole war. So they knew that Jews are people to be proud of. So Susi was our interpreter. So Susi became a Ger Emes. His name is Abraham Susi.
Really?
And Susi is buried in Har Menuchos.
Wow.
He died a pauper. Come to my father very often. He died a pauper because in order for us to stay more than the 3 days of passage, and we stayed for a year, he bribed officials to let us stay. So that Jan from the Caribbean, who never made it to the Caribbean, because then came Pearl Harbor. We were united. We came Pearl Harbor, and the Germans and the Japanese became allies. The Germans gave orders to the Japanese to put all the Jews on a boat, take it out to the ocean, and sink it. But the Japanese disobeyed orders, and they took her to Shanghai. And he took her to Shanghai because Shanghai was under Japanese jurisdiction. The Japanese was immaculate and spotless. Shanghai was the most debaucherated, the ghetto, most debaucherated. You needed anybody could go into Shanghai. But in Shanghai also, there were three very special people. There were the Kaduris, there were the Sassoons, and there was Hadun. And I'll tell you a story. They took us in. To them, the proudest thing was the Sephardi Jews from Baghdad, that they had a Torah people coming to their cities. Shanghai was divided into three parts. You had the French town, which was under French jurisdiction, where the wealthy lived. The architecture, the lifestyle, was beyond imagining. Settlement was under British guidance or jurisdiction, and the ghetto was under the Japanese, and actually the Japanese were in control of all. Let me tell you the life that we had in Shanghai, the Nisim that were in Shanghai. Let me back up and then we go forward. When we came to Shanghai, the boys that came and the families that came, they were individuals. It wasn't, I look at it as though the Rebbeinu Shalom took out a little cluster of flowers and planted them into the ghetto. The Mir Yeshiva was 224 boys. But those boys were not all Mir Yeshiva because Europe was completely eradicated. Poland was completely eradicated. There was nothing there. I remember speaking to Benny Gelfish, who was 16 years old. He was the one who gave over the key to the Nazis from Chachmei Lublin. He was one of Chachmei Lublin.
I know his
You had Baranovich, Baranovich Yeshiva was there. So all the 224 was not Mir alone. The 224 was every possible yeshiva that was rebuilt. And here's the story of where we lived. There's so much more, but I'm trying to catch it as much as I can.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job.
Sassoon, the wealthy Sassoon, which are still wealthy, they own 90% of Hong Kong. They have the Peninsula Hotels, which is world famous, is Kaduri, and they were magnanimous financiers. Sassoons lost all their money when Shanghai became communist. But they all had these amazing synagogues in memory of their parents. Hadun was an out-of-the-box kind of a guy. And one day his father came to him in a dream and said, my son. He did not have children. He married a Chinese girl and adopted 14, 15 children. Everyone has put up an edifice in memory of their parents. Why don't you do this for me? So in 1924, when he had this dream, instead of building it in a major part of Shanghai, he built it in the ghetto where all the riff-raff Chinese lived. Nobody came. It was empty for something like 20, 30 years. When the refugees came in, and they had to leave both Frenchtown and settlement, and settle in the ghetto, that the Mir Yeshiva came in, he let them use that shul. That shul had exactly 224 seats. And the yeshiva had exactly 224 students.
Wow.
Miracle again. In Shanghai, Rabbi Ashkenazi was the rabbi in the ghetto. money came in. Rabbi Kalmanovich was raising money in America to send money to the refugees. The hardest life of all were those that had the German Jews who came in from Austria, wealthy people, and all of a sudden they are demoted to be in the ghetto. I'll tell you about my home. I think I had the nicest, biggest home in Shanghai from all the people. My home was one room. I slept on the floor. We had running water, but you really couldn't use it because it was dangerous to drink the water. We had bathroom facilities, which we didn't use because there were so many people. But we had a home, and the house was always with people and guests and simchas and show you. And I have tons of pictures to show what life was. We had Shabbat, we had Yontif, we had food, we had housing, we had shoes. We lived a normal life. I went to school in settlement. I had a British education. I wrote and spoke English. I was the interpreter for my family because I had a high school graduation at the age of 12. But the German Jews who came from this tremendous wealthy life couldn't adapt, and food was not much. So my father and Rabbi Ashkenazi opened up a soup kitchen, and they would come in to the soup kitchen with a yarmulke because they wanted to have one meal, a halakha meal. Things that was difficult for them is having a honey pot in their room. A honey pot is party. And every morning, they would pick up the waste, human waste, in one cart. And every morning, they would pick up the dead bodies on the street. That was the second cart. Those are the things I remember, and I don't want to remember. I want to remember a Shabbos where we would buy one chicken, and that was shared between two families, my family of 5 and Rabbi Naiman's family of 7. That chicken lasted a whole week, the covered Shabbos. And of course, the fish that would go and again shared equally. Were we hungry? A child doesn't know what hunger is. A child knows the safety and the security of a home, loving parents. We didn't have much dishes. We had a couple of pieces of silverware. We lived. We had Shabbat, we had Yontif, we had Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur in the shul, and the Ohel Moshe, the tears pouring. We had Anschluss. We had Ahavas Habriot. We had so much Amunah. We had put up sukkahs. We lived a life. We lived a Torah life, Simchas Torah, walking in the streets with the apple and the candles, a poor life. I had one dress, one shoe, had to clean it out every morning to do it. But we lived. We didn't have a camp. We didn't have looking to the garbage can for peels. We did not have that. And I look at Shanghai as a lesson of how to be. I eat.
Yeah, and especially what was going on in the world at that time, you really were fortunate to be where you were.
Yes, it's a miracle. And take a look now. You know, when Rebbetzin Kotler was with us in Shanghai, and the American, by the way, did bomb us, but no film person was killed during the bombing. And you come back and you see that little cluster. I'm not talking about the Hasidic world. Hasidic world started the war. It came in 1943. This was already 39, 40. Nothing left. Nothing. And yet, look what we built up.
In Shanghai?
Shanghai. From every yeshiva, boy, Benny Fischer.
Yeah.
You know Mr. Fischer, I'm sure you heard, of course. That's his special
You should have a
thing.
full
Yes, you should.
Yes. Benny Fischer, that's his cufflinks he gave my dad. Never leaves my neck.
Wow.
never leaves my neck. He was like my father's adopted son. I call him my oldest brother. When my father left this world, the one who regulated him for Yerushalayim, for his final resting place, was Benny Bishop.
Wow.
You had Yasser Ganger was with us there. I would like to, I have a flash drive, and I would love you to see the pictures of Shanghai. It will be that for you alone, because it will show you what life and living a Torah true world is like.
Thank you.
It's not the bells and whistles. It's the way, and this is what we are lacking today, the young people. You will build a Bais Neman. Remember, the Shabbos table is the most important thing for you. Forget about all the rest of the thing. Raise your family. Ahavat Yisrael. Ahavat Torah. And accept all Malchus Shemayim. And look at every single person. We're talking about Japanese, Chinese. There were Nazis. Accept every person. B'Tselem Elokim, because everybody was born. It's not Erda Goy and Erda Eid. Who saved us?
So it's Goyim.
Goyim.
Right.
Who saved us?
And they didn't even know you, or you didn't really. They were just trying to do the right thing, you know? We'll be right back to this episode and traveling the world. But talking about traveling the world, before you go anywhere, whether, Baruch Hashem, things are opening up. Some people are going away for Yantif, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Some places, true. But, regardless, wherever you are, you don't want to be in that situation where you're like, shoots, I need a good, reliable pharmacy.
Like, I need to fill the albuterol for the inhaler, or I need a refill on this medication before my flight leaves, and I'm just not able to reach somebody, or I'm not getting it delivered on time. You don't have those issues when you're with AMR Pharmacy. Their customer support is A+.
You sound like you're reading it. He's not reading it.
No, there's a teleprompter behind the camera.
Oh my gosh!
If everyone doesn't know, the behind the camera over here is someone just holding up, cue cards.
I
Yaakov,
think that would
next
make.
One.
Thank you, Nachi. This is great. I have so much to say. Who wrote these? Yeah. So I think it's also like, let's be obvious. There's so many pharmacies around. You could always tap into those pharmacies, but it's like what Nachi said. That customer care that you get with AMR is like none other.
It's funny you said there's so many pharmacies. There's also so many religions.
True.
There are a ton of religions,
Ooh.
but Judaism is your type. Yiddishkeit is your type. You're a Jew. AMR is for you.
Well, I like that.
Yeah, baby. Shiggy Mealy. I'll see you later.
How many people do you think? How many generations? How many people do you think are now alive because of I guess the guy that saved all of you in Shanghai? The tens of thousands of offsprings. No,
10,000. Right now we have 50,000.
50,000.
Wow. That's amazing.
All came in from 1,000 visas against the emperor's wishes.
Mm.
I look at it. Sugihara. By the way, last year with Miriam Jaffe, we met his granddaughter, and that's why Miriam is so enthralled. What the miracle of Shanghai is beyond what you can imagine. The international dateline, and I'm quoting names that you should know because they are here, and their children and grandchildren, Shimanowitz, we call them Shimanovich. He fasted for 2 days because he wasn't sure when Yom Kippur is.
Wow.
And yet, in the hot weather, no water, Yerushalayim.
It's really powerful.
Ahavat Hashem.
Is it possible for, I guess, people in our generation to have that strength, to have that dedication? I mean, you and everyone... And not everyone, but most people in your generation were put through the ringer. A lot of challenges, a lot of tests that really pushed you to show greatness. We're in Galus, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it,
Yeah.
How do we still achieve that level of greatness, of the dedication?
Because we don't have enough ruchnis and too much gashmias. We think we made it all. We didn't. It was a gift from God. Every single thing, every second is a gift from God. Appreciate that. I walk down and I see a crocus coming up on a sidewalk. Nobody planted it. Min hashamayim. Everything. If things go wrong, it's for your benefit. The Rebbetzin Shalom wants it this way. He owes you nothing. You owe him
Everything.
Respect, everything. And that's what we don't have today. Why do you think I go out and talk about this?
You tell me.
I'll tell you. I'm involved with the Holocaust Museum in Chicago. I wasn't involved. I became involved because I had fallen. My children wanted me to talk about what we have, my life. I wrote a book, and it became very accepted, and people wanted to know how we lived. And I remember being at the museum, Tisha B'Av, I go there, even though 90% is just the general public, maybe 10 Shomer Shabbos people and that. And Rabbi Lau was invited to speak. And the head of the museum at that time was the same person that Rabbi Lau was in the camp with, but he didn't know about that. And when he got up and he said, Zachar ve'al tishtach, remember and don't forget, you must always, always tell the story. No matter what, you must tell that story. And I took it upon myself. I said, yes, you're right. What is happening again now in the world? Anti-Semitism.
Yeah, it's rising.
But we forgot. Don't forget. You waved that Yid banner high. We are the chosen people. Don't take advantage of it. Don't take advantage of this. Be grateful, because whatever you have produced, whatever you have accomplished, it's not your genius. It's a gift from God. If you are going to be grateful for the one who gives you everything, your attitude will change.
It's really beautiful.
After going through what you've been through, did you ever think that, that's it? The life for Jews is going to change and become better forever? Or did you not think that way? Did you feel, what? We're always going to be persecuted and anti-Semitism is always going to be present?
No, there will always be the story of Yaakov and Esau. It always. It's the way we deal with this Yaakov and Esau. Every 70 years, you see an uprising, whether it's pandemic. Every 70, 80 years, Mashiach will come, but we have to clean up our acts. We are what's killing us today is I want, I need, iPad, iPhone. I have no time for anyone. When I'm here, my iPhone is out.
Yeah, you specifically said it to
My
your grandson.
iPhone, I don't care if president, whoever is president will call me. Out. I'm giving you what I feel my message. I don't want to see a woman going down the aisle in a grocery store with her phone, mommy, mommy, mommy. I'm on the phone. I don't go for that. You raise your children. You're raising your future. Don't act the way you are. This is your future. What will your child will be left with? I'm on the phone, or we're getting ready for Shabbos. We're having a Shabbos table. We're going to shul. Doesn't matter what kind of shoes you wear. I had one dress. I had one pair of shoes, but it sparkled for Shabbos. How much do you need? How much do you want? Don't look at your neighbor to see what he has. This is my portion. This is what the Rebbetzin wants. Tameach b'chalko. Ezehu ha'ashir. You saw this young woman that was here before. I've taken a lot of them under my wing. As a realtor, they knew I was different. I worked for one of the biggest firms. They said, she doesn't come in on Saturday, she doesn't answer the phone, she doesn't do this, she doesn't do this. But I was geeky until they walked into my home.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because when I Googled you, I saw two interesting things. One is that you actually went back to Shanghai, which we'll talk about after this. But first, I saw that you're a realtor.
Yes.
And you're still a realtor.
I'm still working.
But you, like you just mentioned, you were working at a time where people were being let go for not coming on Shabbos. It's very interesting to see.
They were hired on a Monday and fired on a Friday.
Oh my gosh.
And I would come in, and I would have, most of them were Goyim that I worked with, and they would give me a list of contracts. One of the things is Chaya never lies. Chaya will tell you the truth. Till today, if there is a problem in any kind of a situation that I work with, and I work with the city of Chicago now at my age, and I said, if it's a bad thing, if it's difficult, Chaya gets it.
Wait, it's interesting that you in the beginning of your life you were looking for a home, I guess, somewhat, and your family, and keep on getting pushed around. Do you think that's why you got into being a realtor, helping people find the right home?
Well, let me put it this way. I wanted to be a teacher more than anything else in the world. Started the first base Yaakov. Oh, okay. Yes, but then I couldn't be a teacher. But I put through laws, fighting with the Board of Education to get transportation for children who couldn't handle it. My husband, I told my husband when we got married, there's one thing I don't want to be as a rabbi's wife. My father gave his life away for people. 5 years, my father was busy for the whole world, but never had time for his children. And I said, I just don't want to be a rabbi's wife. And he very wisely answered, no, we'll see what will be. And sure enough, 2 years after we were married in Lakewood, we went to Chicago. The whole starter of the Chicago life changed because the old West Side wasn't safe anymore, and we had to move to a new neighborhood. Of course, you couldn't have a rabbi who doesn't speak English in a new post-war. I must have. So my husband became the rabbi. I was all of 20 years old when I became a Rebbetzin. Influenced a lot of people. West Rogers Park now, the first shul that opened, Orthodox. Every single thing was conservative and reform. And they laughed at us. We'll never make it. We built up West Rogers Park. That's a little Yerushalayim.
Mm. And it's a beautiful. Chicago has one of the nicest
outside of New York. It's one of the biggest Jewish communities in America.
Yeah, it's really nice. So how do you wait? So you became a realtor or got more into it because you wanted to combat the idea of just being the Rebbetzin?
I became a realtor because I needed the money.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I know that's a very good reason to get a job like that.
I needed the money.
Appreciate the honesty.
And because I had issues with special needs, I needed flexible hours.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so, but someone could look at you and, at your age now and say...
And experiences. Yeah.
And say like, okay, it was great, you're a realtor. Like, why continue doing it?
I told you I needed the money.
No, then, but now...
Why am I still doing it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I will tell you why I'm still doing it. First of all, I have met many different people as a realtor. And they would ask me, what is your... I'll sum it up in one sentence. When Chaya Small sells you a house, she doesn't sell you a house. She sells you a life.
It's good marketing.
I kind of want you to sell me a life.
Yeah, you want to go look? Let's look at houses here.
No, but I know. You see it in Chicago.
She sells me, you sell you a life.
What does that mean to you?
I'll give you for instance. I had a woman from some town in Jersey who was recommended to me by a jeweler in 47th Street, and she came to Chicago to buy a house. They want every place but not this neighborhood, which is very frum. And the answer was, well, it's not so terrible. We drive on Shabbos. It's not so terrible if there's a woman rabbi. It's not so terrible this, that, this. Fast forward. She's now my Rebbetzin.
Really?
Her son went, and she said, all I want is to be able to, whatever it is, her son gives a daf yomi every week on Zoom. He went to see him twice. And she said, and every time he gets up to speak for his daf yomi, he said, we thank Mrs. I listened to it. I thank Mrs. Small for giving me a life. Okay? I went into somebody's house, a woman who I sold her a house, and he said, oh, this. I didn't think she was Jewish because she had and she lived all Gentile neighborhood, but it was Christmas time, and they didn't have a Christmas tree in the window, and she started making fun of a mikveh. I said, would you like to see it? I'll take you. I took her. She wears a sheitel now.
Whoa.
So you're really in Kirov, and you sell houses for like fun. Like if there's a sale of a house, it's great, but really you're in undercover Kirov.
Well, sheitel is incorporated in the life statement,
I guess.
So I want to ask you about.
And then if they buy a house and they show them a Shabbos,
so it's a bonus.
And then they get a mezuzah, and then they start asking questions, and they like the lifestyle. Look at this woman that just came.
Right.
It's a good deal. It's a good deal to buy a house with a shas, fully stocked, Sfarim. It's a good package.
Nachi wants you to sell him
yeah, if it's going to come with mezuzah, is in Sfarim.
Okay, West Rogers Park.
Let's go.
Well, I get so much joy and so much pleasure when I was in Florida 2 years ago recuperating on something, and one of the public guardian guys said, oh, Chaya, I was the Shabbos boy. I said, what do you mean you were the Shabbos? He's a guy, Christian, very devout Christian. And he said, what do you mean? A Shabbos boy. Easter and Pesach came in the same time. And he was in a hotel that was cheap, and the whole hotel was taken up by Hasidic Jews. So he would push button in the elevator. He found it. They know that this is they know. Even the Goyim know that this is Shabbat.
Wow. So before we finish up, we like to ask three certain type of questions. But before that, I want to touch upon you revisiting Shanghai. What was that like in 2014?
Several times.
Oh, you went a few times?
I went several times that I revisited Shanghai. The first time I went is where I went to see a house, a showcase house done by Adler. And I freaked out. Why did I freak out? Because this house, it needs you.
No, just if you could.
Oh, okay. Why did I freak out? Because it reminded me of my house in Shanghai. The structure, I'm a realtor, so and I told my daughter, I said, this is crazy. I went to a house that reminded me of my home. Even though we had just one room, but the rest of the house, they had the coach house, they had the servant quarters where the Germans lived. It was just too much of a similarity. So my daughter and I went 5 days to Shanghai, found my house, found everything. That was one time. Second time I went to Shanghai is when I was in Israel, and my brother, who was born in Shanghai, on a Wednesday said, Heike, I really want to see Shanghai. I said, so let's go. So by Monday, we were on the plane going to Shanghai. Mishpacha came out with a big article about that. And then I went now to Japan, and I'm involved with the people. So I have been, yes, many times, and now the group of Chinese are coming May 6th. They want to talk about the Jewish life in Shanghai, politics, it's all politics.
So one of the questions that we like to ask our guests is, if there was one person from history, whether, from the beginning of the world to even, of late years, that is no longer with us, if you could sit down with them for an hour and have a slice of pizza with them. It doesn't have to be pizza. I just added that in. And you could spend an hour with them.
Chaya was good pizza.
You could have a Shabbos meal with them. How about that? Who would it be?
Again?
One person from history that if you could meet.
Sit down and talk with them?
Yeah.
I wish I could answer you better. Knowing me, I wouldn't go with a very hush of a person. Knowing me, I would go with the simple, everyday, enough. I can't answer it on such short things. I would really have to analyze it.
Okay.
I'll call you back and tell you. I can't. There's so many people. I see only good in every person. I cannot pick out one person.
If Baruch Hashem, you lived a long life so far, and Mirz Hashem, you should live Ad Mea V'Esrim. Being that you've been around so long, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of advice.
I haven't been around so long. I'm just starting to live.
You're 37. I know, 37 years old is not. It's not. But what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Accept life the way it is. When you get a lemon, you make a lemonade. But dress it up with an umbrella, with a cherry, with all things.
I like that.
I have gotten so many whammies in my life, but Chasdei Hashem is not worth.
And what about the reverse of that? What's the worst advice someone told you?
To be angry, to expect entitlement. Entitlement. I must have, I need, I want, the I. Forget about I, you. You embrace it. I. Too much I. Me.
That's very nice. Well, Rebbetzin, thank you so much for sitting down with us. And thanks for consolidating. We know you literally have hours worth to say, but I think you consolidated it very eloquently.
I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. I don't know Miriam Schreiber. That was her idea.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you to Miriam.
Thank you to everyone who made this happen.
I hope I didn't disappoint you.
Oh, of course not. This has been really incredible. Listen, I grew up here in New York. This is what I've seen. This is what I've experienced. Maybe travel a little bit here and there, but what you went through and you experienced, just to hear it firsthand, is so eye-opening, and it puts things in a different perspective. And I think that's hopefully what it will do for the people who are listening as well. It makes us think differently. Life didn't start for Jewish people, or even my life didn't start when I was born. There's so much underground that was happening, and the Jewish people, the people we are today, probably couldn't be where we are without you and without your perseverance, your dedication, your strength.
Ahavat Hashem, Ahavat Abayos.
Yeah.
If you have a moment, I brought my flash. But as a matter of fact, when I was coming here, I had a call from a school in Libertyville. If I would do a Zoom with a school for children, just give them hope and faith and believe, not entitlement.
Right. Thank you so much.
And remember, both of you, when you're home, the Beis Mikdash Katan, the Shabbos table.
Very nice.
Remember
you.
that.
Thank you, Rebbetzin.
Thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed that episode as much as we did.
We sit here the entire time, by the way, waiting for you to finish the episode. Some of you take longer than others. So if you're like cooking and you keep pausing the episode, we're just like waiting. Could they finish cooking so we could do the outro?
All you people, you drove to work for the first half and you drove back. That was a good work day, but
Yeah, 15 hours. We're sitting here waiting for you to finish. So like, now what?
But we want to tell you guys that there's so many incredible other people that Nachi and I sat down with that we're really excited to put out, and we're recording even more. So stay tuned for awesome stuff. Like we said on the last time, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or send us suggestions. And Nachi, anything else you want to say?
No, just a shout out to all those people doing good things out there because you make our lives easier.
Go for the show.
Ciao.